Hello, guys, and welcome back to Healing with Wisdom podcast, where every week we discuss modern and ancient practical tools to make sense of our lives and break free from the present day chaos. I'm Pepe. I'm very excited to have you with us for today's episode. Today, we will talk about the best practical strategies that will help you become the disciplined, high achiever person you always wanted to be. The most important thing you need to understand is that the little habits and the everyday actions you perform every single day have an enormous impact on your life. Let's put it this way: the person you become today is a result of the everyday habits performed for the past few years. And the habits you have today will make you the person you will be tomorrow. Throughout this episode, we will define what a habit is. We will dive into the importance of making small changes to create a big impact in our lives, how to develop good habits and get rid of bad habits through some very practical step by step strategies. So, first of all, let's start by defining what is a habit. According to Wikipedia, a habit is a routine or a behavior that is repeated regularly and tends to occur subconsciously. So it's an automatic behavior. It's very important to underline the fact that it's a subconscious action, meaning that you are not really actively deciding to perform the action, but you are doing it automatically on autopilot. One of the simplest example I can think of from top of my head is, for example, when you wake up in the morning, at least I think what most people do is you brush your teeth, right? I mean, I hope so. At least you brush your teeth in the morning, right? So you don't really think about it before you go to brush your teeth. You just wake up and do it automatically, or maybe after breakfast, but still automatically. It's a subconscious action that you don't have to actively think about it. Am I going to brush my teeth this morning? No, you just do it. You don't have to decide whether you are going to do it or not. You're not just standing there pondering. So that's exactly something you do unconsciously or automatically, something you don't have to think through, you don't have to decide, you just do it. That's a habit. Okay. Another habit could be, for example, locking the car door when you get out of your car, throwing the jacket on the sofa as soon as you get in the house, or maybe interrupting people in conversations when you feel the urge to say something. As you can see, there are quote unquote positive and quote negative habits. The rest of this episode will focus greatly on how to increase the positive ones and decrease the negative ones, or whatever it is that you label positive or negative, right? So, given the fact that there are actions that you repeat nearly endlessly every day of your life and sometimes multiple times a day, imagine how the domino effect of habits can have a massive impact on the person you actually become. Okay, so if you are 40, for example, and for the past 20 years you had the habit of exercises for 60 minutes in the morning, then you'd probably still be in great shape in your 40s if you've done that every day. If for the past 20 years you have not exercised and the first automatic thing you do in the morning is lighting a cigarette, then no wonder why you cannot even run a mile in your 40s. Now, the problem is not the single one cigarette that you smoked today or yesterday, it is the accumulation of 365 cigarettes a year for 20 years that made you unhealthy today. This is what I mean when I say that little everyday actions end up making big impacts in our life, like a domino effect. So it is very easy to underestimate the importance of little actions, right? The ones that we perform every day, because we often think that big achievements require big actions, when in reality, big achievements, require consistent habits. When Michael Phelps won the gold medal in swimming at the Olympic Games, it was not a single performance that made him champion. It was time investment every single day into working hard to become a tiny bit better every day for many years. Okay, so it's the everyday action. I want to emphasize that. Not many people realize that, and I think it's really important to understand this if you really want to succeed at something. If you can get 1% better each day for 1 year at something, you will be 37 times better by the end of the year. How amazing is that? And you only have to put a little bit of effort every single day. You need to make it a habit. And the opposite is also true. So making something negative every day for a year will make you worse at something by the end of the year. That said, it is only when you look at the bigger picture that habits make sense, right? Because you understand the value of little everyday efforts to reach your desired outcome. If you practice yoga today for 1 hour, you probably won't see any difference from yesterday. But in 2, 3, 4 months from now, if you keep practicing for an hour a day, that's a lot of hours that will probably make you very strong, flexible, and more self aware. And that's in months. Now imagine in years, right? So imagine you do this task or habit every single day for a year or 2 or 3 or 4. You'll be a real yogi by the end of these 4 years. So, in other words, habits have a compound effect that can work in your favor or against you. Can you think of any small habit in your life that had a big impact over time? Let me know in the comment section. So, just to quickly recap, in a nutshell, a habit is an automatic action that, if repeated every single day, adds up to a massive change after months or years. Now, the question is, how do we acquire new positive habits and get rid of unwanted ones? This is where the game starts getting exciting as well and a bit more practical. I'm going to go through a few actual practical steps that you can implement in your day-to-day life. But first, the number one thing that I recommend people to do is actually change the way you think about habits. And this has everything to do with the way you think about your goals as well. I'm a big fan of setting daily, weekly, monthly, and life goals. However, what most people do when setting goals and defining the achievements they want to reach, they give them way too much importance. They give way too much importance to the goal itself. Let me explain. What I recommend instead, it sounds cliche, but it's true. Instead of focusing on the final goal or the outcome, fall in love with the process. We heard this many times, right? If you are falling in love with the process, you are guaranteed that you're going through a process that will let you achieve the goal. If you want to be, for example, an entrepreneur, let's say you want to have a $1 million business, the goal here is $1 million, right? And the process is running the business, hiring and training employees, doing proper market research, etc. Now imagine you focus only on the process, and instead of not forgetting but leaving the goal aside, would you still succeed? I think the answer is yes, I think you would, and probably you have better chances to as well, because you're also enjoying the process. If your goal is to win the local tennis tournament, for example, if you focus only on yourself and focus on getting a little bit better every single day, instead of spending the whole time staring at the scoreboard, then it would definitely increase your chances of winning. So it's about focusing on the process rather than focusing on the final outcome. The bottom line is, don't focus too much on the final outcome and instead focus on the process you are going through. So change the way you think about your goals, change the way you think about your habits and the way to achieve your goals as well. What happens when you focus on the goal too much? First of all, it can make you unhappy about your current situation, because until the moment you do reach your goal, focusing on the final outcome can increase the feeling of impatience within you, and you might run the risk of labeling yourself as a disappointment if you don't achieve that goal. When I first started my first online business, I was obsessed with it. I was so stressed about making my first sale that I was not able to appreciate all the beautiful people and things I had around me. This both in my private life and in my career as well. I wouldn't hang out with friends, family, I wouldn't give myself time to rest. How can someone be happy in that way? How can you even focus on doing something? I was too determined to reach XYZ goal that I didn't enjoy nor even a little bit of the process I was going through. And in fact, I quit. I burned out and I was not able to keep up with that. This was my personal experience with being too goal oriented, and I even started to doubt my self worth. Some other goal oriented people, when they do reach the outcome, might be so satisfied with themselves about it that they might abandon the process altogether. For example, that's why so many people fall into the good old bad habits after reaching the goal. For example, I had a friend, he used to be very unhappy with his shape, nearly obese, and then he decided he was finally going to establish a gym routine to get in better shape. That was his goal, the final outcome to reach. Once he reached it after a few months, he actually did pretty well. Guess what? He ended up going back to his previous bad habits and put on a lot of weight again. He didn't go back to his starting point, but he didn't stay in that healthy, beautiful, you know, amazing shape that he desired for so long and he worked hard for. He basically found himself in a miserable situation again, and he had to start all over again. If only he had fallen in love with the process of taking care of his body, doing sports, eating well and consciously, and avoiding junk food as much as he could, then this problem would have never occurred. This is the number one thing you should do to change the way you think about your habits. Basically, your habits have to be your identity, not simply a tool with which you achieve a certain milestone. Okay? You need to shift from outcome based habits to identity based habits. And how do you do that? You might start by asking yourself, who do I want to become? Rather than what do I want to achieve? Instead of setting a goal to read 20 books a year, reframe it as becoming a person who reads regularly. Okay? This is a subtle shift that focuses on building your identity around the habit. It makes your identity different. It's not just about reaching the goal of doing so. If you want to start reading, begin by reading a page or two every single day. It's important that you do every day, repeatedly. And as you do this, you reinforce the identity of someone who reads daily. You make the habit part of who you are, not just a task to check off. It's not just in your to-do list. By the way, I'm not a big fan of to-do list. I'm a big fan of habits. So instead of saying I'm going to the gym because I want to achieve XYZ physical shape, say I'm going to the gym because I'm that kind of person who loves himself or herself. I eat healthy because I'm that kind of person who take care of their health. I don't smoke because I'm not a smoker. That's my identity. On the other hand, if you consider and talk about yourself as a smoker, then quitting smoking will be much harder. You see how it works with or against you. You see that once you start identifying with the person you want to become, there is not a particular thing to achieve. There is only the process of actually doing the thing. Okay? So that's when your goals become your identity. Then you can still set certain milestones to achieve. For example, there is nothing wrong with setting milestones. I'm not trying to say that setting milestones is bad, but whatever milestone you have, just don't let it be your identity, because otherwise you won't be able to keep the habit system that will eventually get you there one day. Your identity is not someone who wants to run a marathon. Your identity is someone who runs every day to get 1% better every single day. That's when you go so much further. You run 3 marathons. Okay? Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself in such a situation, setting a goal for yourself, starting with the greatest motivation, only to quit later? Have you ever tied your happiness to the eventual final outcome that you were pursuing? How did it make you feel about the process? Let me know in the comments below. Now that we talked enough theory and we know what a habit is and what's the first thing you should focus on to develop good habits, it's enough theory. Let's go on and put all this into practice. I'm going to share 4 simple steps that help me and thousands of other people reach their desired outcomes and enjoy the process as well, which is, as we discussed earlier, the most important thing. I should mention before I start that I took inspiration from these 4 simple steps from the book Atomic Habits from James Clear. Mr. Clear has been for me a great inspiration and for many other people as well. And if it wasn't for his teachings, this podcast probably would have never existed. If you wish to go deep with the habit game and read the book, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. It's an affiliate Amazon link, so I do get a small percentage of the sale that I will hopefully get to reinvest into the podcast to create a better experience for you guys as well. But first, if you are finding this information valuable, make sure you spread the word even further with friends and family that might find this valuable as well. By commenting, liking, and sharing our podcast, you not only support us, but you are also spreading knowledge to others and you take part in changing their lives a little bit as well. So that's some serious good karma there. Don't forget to subscribe to ensure you don't miss out on future talks. It is the best way to support the podcast so that we can invest more money into it and give you a better experience. Also, if you are listening to this on a podcast platform and you prefer to watch the video instead, check out our YouTube channel, Healing with Wisdom. You will find the link in the description. The simple steps that I was talking about that James Clear recommends us to do when trying to adopt a new habit are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Okay, so let's explore them a little bit in depth with a few examples to make sense out of it. So let's talk about step 1, make it obvious. So what does it mean making something obvious when it comes to an habit? It means placing cues in your environments so that you remember performing the desired action. For example, picture this. Imagine you want to start to eat healthier, okay? But every time you open the fridge, there is a delicious chocolate cake staring back at you, okay? It's like it's calling your name. If the chocolate cake is there, you are obviously going to be tempted to eat it. Now, imagine if instead of the chocolate cake, the first thing you saw it's a bunch of fresh fruits or pre-cut veggies. That's making it obvious, okay? It's about rearranging your words so the good stuff, the stuff you want to do more of, is right there in your face. If you are at home bored, you have nothing to do, and you open the fridge to reach for the chocolate cake, chances are that you are only doing it because the chocolate cake represents the cue to initiate your negative habit. Do you really crave that chocolate cake? If you really ask yourself the question, the answer will probably be no. But if it's there when you open the fridge, the action of grabbing it and eating it, it's so encoded into your subconscious mind that you don't even notice it. So it's the same story for the chips on the dinner table, the candies in the kitchen drawer. If you are aiming at eating healthier, this is a habit that starts in the supermarket. It doesn't start at home. Okay, so it's about filling your house with healthy food rather than unhealthy food. Okay, in the moment you buy the chocolate cake, that's when you lose. Not having that chocolate cake around, when you don't have that chocolate cake around or the chips or whatever, that's when you win. Okay, so it's about placing cues in your environment to help you adopt the habit that you want to adopt. This is the case of eating healthy, but this can be applied to anything. If you are aiming at announcing your professional skills, for example, in investing, place the relevant books about investing or set up a studying station wherever it's visible in an easily accessible spot. For example, a desk with whatever material that you need to have a constant visual reminder to analyze the market daily. Okay, so you gradually build your expertise. It's something that Because you have a cue, you will do every day because it's there. You cannot avoid seeing it. For example, I wanted to build the habit of practicing yoga every single day. And at the beginning, I found myself very inconsistent. I would practice every other day or every 3 days. My yoga mat used to be tucked away in the garage, and every time I had to go all the way there, grab it, and bring it back inside so that I could start practicing. You see how many steps there were in between me and practicing yoga, you know? Then, after I read James Clear's book, I decided I would dedicate a space entirely to that activity. And to apply the law of making it obvious, I left the mat permanently on the floor. The only thing I had to do was to step on it and I would start practicing. That's how I built the habit. Now I don't need to leave my mat around anymore. I can even leave it tucked away if I want to because this habit is so encoded in my brain that no matter what, I will practice yoga every day. This is not just about physical stuff, This law of making it obvious can be applied to the digital world as well. For example, if you want to spend less time on social media, you could start by moving those apps off your home screen so that they are not the first thing you see when you unlock your phone. It sounds like a little thing, but it works, even just for a little bit of amount of time. Chances are that if you go through more steps to open those apps that you want to use less, you'll be more mindful about starting to browse them and getting sucked up into their black holes instead. And have you ever found yourself unlocking your phone, for example, and immediately, without even thinking about it, opening Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, even if you didn't really think consciously, I really want to unlock my phone and scroll social media? You did it very automatically because the icon is there and it's right there on your screen. You see it, you click on it. I've done it many times, I still do it, and you can see how every one of these steps can be applied not only to implement good habits but also getting rid of bad ones. So it's not only about making it obvious if you want to implement a habit, it's also about making it invisible if you want to get rid of a bad habit. The key here is to make the cues of good habits obvious and the cues of bad habits invisible or hard to reach. It's about designing your environment to make the right choices effortless and the wrong ones a bit of a hassle. Then comes the second step, which is make it attractive. This is about making your desired habit a bit more enticing or less enticing if you want to get rid of it. On the neurological level, what makes something enticing is the dopamine release that you experience before the actual action. In other words, dopamine, which is essentially what drives motivation to do anything, peaks right before the desired action is about to happen. For example, gambling addicts have a spike before they place a bet, not after. Same happens with drug addicts. They get a spike when they see the substance, not when they use it. It's that spike that makes the behavior enticing or quote unquote attractive. It's interesting because the reward system in your brain gets activated in the same way, if not more intensely, with anticipation of the reward, not with the reward itself. This is exactly why you need to make your habits enticing and attractive so that you are essentially tricking your brain into spiking dopamine during the anticipation of the habit. When dopamine rises, motivation rises as well. Okay? Now that we covered the why, let's talk about the how because it's easy. It doesn't sound easy, but it's easy. How do I make a habit more enticing? A good way to make a habit attractive is by leveraging what James Clear defines as temptation bundling. That is, tying the habit you want to implement to things you already love. Imagine you want to start journaling, but you're just not feeling motivated to do it every day. And what about you combine it with your morning coffee? Imagine you already have a habit of drinking coffee every day. What if you combine journaling with coffee? The idea is to create a combo, your favorite morning ritual with your new habit. It doesn't have to be your morning ritual, it can be your evening ritual or whatever habit that you perform every day with the new habit that you're trying to implement. Journaling is not just a task, it's part of your cherished coffee time in this case. This pairing creates a sense of pleasure and anticipation around the habit. So because your brain is anticipating that coffee time, okay, while your brain is anticipating the coffee time, it's starting to spike dopamine. However, if you tie that coffee time to journaling, your brain is you are subconsciously releasing dopamine, and you are tying that release of dopamine to the journaling too, not only to the coffee. Imagine you don't really love cooking, for example, but you enjoy listening to the music. If you want to develop the habit of cooking more so that you can save money and eat healthier, you could bundle cooking with listening to your favorite artist. In that way, cooking becomes not just a task to put food in your body, but it can also be fun and enjoyable. That's what I personally do, by the way. I love cooking with music. Before you open Spotify and start playing your favorite artist, there is a release of dopamine in your brain. If you can pair this release of dopamine with the habit of cooking, over time this task of cooking will be subconsciously associated with the release of dopamine. And it will become more and more natural to the point that you will not need the music anymore. You will just cook. Then comes the third step of making it easy. It means literally making something easy, making the habit a little bit challenging, but easy enough so that you can repeat it over and over without getting discouraged. So, why is easy so powerful? When you are faced with a task that feels like climbing a mountain, our motivation often packs the bag and says goodbye, basically, because it's way too hard. But if that task is more like a little rock, suddenly we are in, we want to do it. That's the magic of making things easy. If you're playing chess for 1 week and challenge someone that has been playing for 10 years, there is no game and there is no room for improvement for you either. You can't really learn much by playing that game because you will be done in no time. If you are new to climbing, you won't start by climbing a mountain, right? This approach should be applied to anything. It suggests that we do little but consistent steps towards our goals, especially when it comes to sports, because that's also how you avoid injuries. You're not going to try a handstand the first time you practice calisthenics. Instead, you invest some weeks in learning crow pose, then tuck planche, and then headstand, and then finally you train handstand. People love to skip the boring stuff, but it is by falling in love with the boring processes that we achieve amazing things. And ultimately, if you want to achieve something big and implement a lifelong habit, you just need to fall in love with boredom a little bit as well. This strategy of making something easy can also obviously be implemented in the opposite way to get rid of toxic habits. For example, if you want to spend less time on your phone at night, make it difficult. Okay, charge your phone in another room. Don't charge it close to your bed. It's a simple tweak, but it removes the temptation of grabbing your phone over and over again. This overlaps you a little bit with the habits of making obvious or invisible. Or you could turn off your notifications altogether. In that way, you're not tempted to pick up your phone every single time there is a notification, but rather when you feel or need to use it. There is going to be a separate episode about digital well-being, but for the moment, the bottom line is that you should make new habits as easy as possible to start and bad habits as difficult as possible to be repeated. Okay, so that's the third step. And finally, let's finish off with the fourth, which is make it satisfying. This is all about rewarding yourself when you complete a habit so that you trick your brain into thinking, this feels good. In that way, you will be subconsciously more inclined to repeat that behavior. Your brain is absolutely craving some instant gratification. That's the number one factor that determines whether an action is repeated or not. Okay, so From an evolutionary point of view, this makes a lot of sense because consider that our ancestors never really knew if they were going to survive the day. Okay, so they didn't worry about future too much, and that's why anything that provided instant gratification was very much appreciated. Given the fact that we might live in a much different world nowadays, but our brain is still very, very similar to that of our ancestors, today we still want to repeat those actions that give us instant gratification, such as eating lots of sugar or smoking. That's why it's easy to stick to bad habits. They give us instant gratification. The opposite is also true. When an action is immediately followed by a punishment or something that does not feel good, then that action is less likely to be repeated. I remember as a kid, I grew up in South Italy, and a common way to stop kids from chewing their nails was putting chili on it. This was a great nonna strategy because every time the kids reached their nails to chew them, you could imagine what happened. Now, I'm not trying to convince that you should do that or do it to your kids. However, the point is that if you want, if you want a kid or yourself to stop repeating a given behavior, there has to be some consequence that does not feel good immediately after. And if you do want to repeat a certain behavior, having something that feel good immediately after can help your brain decide whether or not this task will be repeated. So this is how you use this concept at your advantage. Think about exercise, for example. We all know it's good for us, right? But it can be hard sometimes to get excited about it. Now imagine if after every workout you gave yourself time to relax in a hot bath or watch an episode of your favorite show or something that you like doing for fun. That post workout reward can make the whole experience more enjoyable and something to look forward to as well. The point here is that you are adding a little bit of immediate pleasure to your new habit. Not every kind of added pleasure would make sense because if you are trying to lose weight, for example, and you reward yourself with a slice of cake every time you work out, it's probably not a good idea. If you are trying to save money and every time you do it, you treat yourself to an expensive dinner, then it makes no sense. So the reward needs to make sense. And the reward is only necessary to start the habit. You don't need to take a bath every single time you go to the gym. You can if you wanted to, but it's only necessary until the behavior you're trying to stick with finally sticks and you make it a habit to work out 3, 4, 5 times a week. Okay, so it doesn't have to be an endless behavior. So just to recap quickly, we talked about what a habit is and how repeating it will essentially multiply its effect over and over. That's why small things repeated often are so important. Then we talked about the fourth strategy that James Clear explained in his book Atomic Habits. Make it obvious, so adding obvious cues around you to continue the habit. Make it attractive, so make it enticing enough by pairing it with another thing that you like to do. Make it easy, that is, making it challenging enough to stimulate your brain but not too difficult so that you get discouraged. And make it satisfying so that you reward yourself every time you perform the habit until you stick with it automatically. And if you are looking to dive deeper into the transformative power of habits, James Clear Atomic Habits offer incredible insights, by the way. I found it really helpful and I left a link in the description if you're interested. It's an affiliate link, which means it supports the podcast and no extra cost to you, allowing us to keep bringing you valuable content each week. So let's end today's episode with the practical exercise. I want to leave you with something practical at the end of each and every episode. This is something you can start today, and it's going to help you solidify those good habits and kick the toxic ones to the curb. Okay? I call it the habit reflection and action plan. This is one of the things I do every year. Some years I've done it every month. First, you grab a notebook or open a digital note-taking app, whatever works best for you. I recommend a notebook, but it's fine, whatever. We're going to divide this exercise into two parts. First of all, we have reflection, and then we have action. So when it comes to reflection, you list your habits, and you start by listing down your daily habits. You include every single habits that you do, from morning routines to how you wind down at night. Just write them all down. For example, wake up, brush your teeth, drink coffee, drink a glass of water, smoke a cigarette, whatever it is that you do every day as a habit. And then you categorize them. Now, take a moment to label each habit as either positive, negative, or neutral, and be honest with yourself. You add a plus symbol next to the habit that is positive, or a minus if it's negative, and a equal symbol if it's neutral. Then you reflect on the impact. Okay, for each and every habit, especially the negative ones, write down how they impact your life. For example, if scrolling through social media for hours for you is a habit every morning or every night, how does this affect your mood or productivity or your sleep? Then comes part two, which is the action plan. So choose one habit to change. Only one. I want you to choose only one habit. Pick one habit you want to work on and really stick with your work. Okay? Maybe it's one you want to develop. Maybe you want to develop a new one, or you want to break a toxic one. And then once you decide which habit, I recommend really starting with one habit at a time. Apply the four laws. Use the four laws that we discussed. Okay? If it's a habit that you want to start, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. If it's a habit you want to get rid of, make it invisible, make it challenging, make it difficult, make it unsatisfying. Okay? You want to read more? Place a book on your pillow every morning. Choose a book that tells about a topic that you love. Set a goal, set a goal of reading one page only every night, and make it satisfying by treating yourself to a nice cup of tea, if you like tea, while you read. After that, after you've started this process of applying the four laws, start to reflect weekly. At the end of each week, or each day if you prefer, take a few minutes to reflect on how you are doing with the habits. Is the system working? What is working? What's not working? And try to adjust the approach as needed. Okay, I highly recommend you do this exercise. It helped me a lot. And just to close everything off, if you find today's episode valuable, please remember that every subscribe, comment, like, or share is not just support for us, but it's a step towards spreading wisdom that can change lives and help create a better world. So take a moment to engage. It's going to create an amazing ripple effect. Make sure you write in the comments your thoughts about this episode, what you think can be improved, and if there is anything that you'd like me to talk about next. If you prefer to watch the video podcast instead, check out our YouTube channel, Healing with Wisdom. You'll find the link in the description, and you will find some affiliate links as well. Huge thanks for tuning in. Catch us every week for more wisdom. And until then, keep learning and keep sharing.